Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we worked on adding our in-game menu for viewing our monster party and for viewing our monster party details. If you missed the previous videos, there will be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There will also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up. So let's get started. So now that we've wrapped up our basic implementation of our monster party and our monster detail scenes, what we're going to do next is we're going to focus on adding support for items to our game, and so we're beginning our next section of videos on our inventory. So for our inventory, what we're going to do is we're going to work on creating a new view in our game, our bag view, where we're able to view all of the available items for our player to use, and then we'll be able to use those items to heal our monster. Later on, we're going to connect this scene back to our battle scene, and then that way we'll be able to use items in battle. And we'll also look to add functionality to get items for NPCs, pick up items in our game. Once we have our basic UI implementation done, we'll work out building out our data model for our inventory, and we're going to connect this to our data manager, and then that way we can persist this data between our sessions. So to see an example of what we're going to be building, what we're going to do is we're going to enhance our menu to have a new option for our bag. And so when we click on our bag view, we'll be taken to a new phaser scene. So we're going to pause our world scene like we did before, and we'll start up this scene. And so in this scene, we're going to end up updating this to pull data from our data manager. And so currently I have 5 potions available to me. And so in this menu, we'll be able to navigate between our various items. We'll see descriptions, and then we'll be able to go ahead and close out our bag if we don't want to use anything. If we do select an item, we'll jump right over to our monster party scene now, and we'll be able to go ahead and choose a monster to use that item. And so here we have a monster that's hurt. And so if we go ahead and use our item, we see we heal them by 30 HP. And then we can take them back to our bag scene, so then that way we can choose to continue to use items, or we can go ahead and leave. And so we'll also add in logic for if we try to use an item on monsters where it's not available, we'll display an appropriate text, and we'll be able to go back to our scene. So now that we have an initial idea of what we're going to be building, we're going to go ahead and jump right into building out our new phaser scene. So we can come back to our code. Let's go ahead and open up our scene keys to get started, and we'll add in a new value for our inventory scene. So let's copy this last line. Let's go ahead and update it. And so we'll do inventory scene, and we'll go ahead and paste that for our value. Then let's go into our scenes folder. Let's add a new file, and we're going to do inventory scene.js. And then what we'll go ahead and do is let's come over to our monster party scene, and we're going to use that to copy some data. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and copy our logic here for our class definition. Let's go ahead and copy our constructor and our type for our scene data. And then let's go ahead and copy the beginning part of our init method. We'll close that. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for our create method. So we'll copy that code, go ahead and paste. Let's close out our method, close out our class. And then let's go ahead and add in our imports. So we'll add all missing imports. Let's move that to the top of our file. And then let's go ahead and update our class name. So we're going to have inventory scene, and we'll update our scene keys as well. So we'll have inventory scene, and then let's update our type definition up here. And so we'll have inventory scene data, and then let's just change our types. All right, so we went ahead and copied our scene data for this scene because this is going to work very similar to our monster party scene, and we'll need to know what scene actually invoked our inventory scene. Since we'll be connecting this to both our world scene from our menu and from our battle scene layer. And so when we want to transition back to the previous scene, we'll need to know which one actually invoked us. All right, so now we have our basic structure in place. Let's jump over to our main.js file. We'll go ahead and add in our new scene. So we'll have inventory scene, and then let's update and reference our class. We'll have inventory scene. And let's jump over to preload, so then that way we can start building our scene right away. And then what we'll do is instead of starting our title scene, let's jump right over to our inventory scene. And then real quick, if we come back to our inventory scene, we need to go ahead and fix our imports. We just need to make sure they have .js. So if we save and if we come back to our game, we should see an empty scene, but we should see in our console log that our inventory scene is now running. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to start building our basic UI, and for that we're going to need to load in some new assets. So previously when we loaded in our assets for our monster party scene, we did include some assets for our inventory scene. So let's go ahead and add those now. So if we go ahead and open up our asset keys, let's come to the bottom of our file. Let's copy our object, and we're just going to go ahead and change this from monster party asset keys to inventory asset keys. And then we'll go ahead and do our inventory background. And then we also have a bag. So we'll go ahead and do inventory bag. And we'll go ahead and update our values on our object to match our keys. And then if we jump over to our preload scene, let's go ahead and add in these assets. So we're going to copy these last lines of code in our create method for loading our image. And let's go ahead and update our log lines. We'll do UI components for inventory. And then for our assets, we'll want to reference our inventory asset keys. And let's do our background. And let's go ahead and update this. And we'll do our inventory bag. And then for our path, we'll be under UI. And it's going to be inventory. And we'll have bag background. PNG. Let's copy this. Go ahead and paste it. And then we're just going to have bag. So now we load in our assets. Let's go ahead and jump back to our inventory scene. And we'll start creating our image game objects. So for our background, we're going to have our inventory background. So let's go ahead and do this, .add.image to create our image game object. We'll place in the top left corner, so 0, 0. Let's reference our inventory asset keys, and we'll do our inventory background. And let's update our origin, so it goes on the top left. So we'll set it to 0. So if we save, we should see our background appear. And so now we're going to go ahead and add in our bag on our left-hand side. So let's go ahead and copy this, go ahead and paste it. Let's change this to inventory bag. And then for our positioning, we're going to want to bump this over to 40 for our X and 120 for our Y. We'll have our origin in the top left, and we need to scale this down a little bit because it's a bigger image. And so we'll just scale it in half. So we'll do 0.5. So then our bag asset should appear. So the next thing we want to do for our inventory scene is we need to go ahead and add in support for our title here and for our sidebar where we have our actual inventory. And so for both of these, we're going to go ahead and use our 9-slice container game object that we created before, and we'll do one for each side. And so for this, once we have our container, we'll be able to add additional objects to it. And so we're going to add a basic rectangle for this background color here, and then we'll also add in our text game objects for our various text items. So go ahead and do this. Let's go back to our code. And so to get started, the first thing we need to do is we need to create our 9-slice containers. And so what we'll do is let's come up to our init method after we have our scene data. We're going to do this. We'll make a new private property, and we're just going to call this 9-slice main container. And we're going to set that equal to a new instance of our 9-slice class that we created before. And so for our configuration, we'll add in our corner cut size. We'll go ahead and do 32 pixels. We need to reference our texture manager, and we'll do this. Scene. We'll do our scene systems, and then we'll go ahead and grab our texture manager. And then we need our asset keys that we like to use, and we'll only be using one. And so for our array, we'll have our UI, asset keys, and we will go ahead and do our menu background. Let's go ahead and add this property to our class. So after our scene data, we'll have our 9-slice main container. Go ahead and throw in our type. And so for this will be our 9-slice. And we'll go ahead and save. So then if we come back to our create method, let's go ahead and create our container. So we'll have const, we'll do container, will be equal to our 9-slice main container. And what we'll do is we'll call our create 9-slice container method. And then we'll go ahead and pass in our phaser scene. And then so our target width and target height, we're going to do 700 for our width, and we'll do 360 for our height. And we need to provide our asset that we're using. So we'll do our UI asset keys, and we'll have our menu background. So after we create our container, we'll want to go ahead and call set position to go ahead and move it in our game. So we'll do position 300 for our X, and we'll do 20 for our Y. So now we have our container here, and let's go ahead and create one for our title text as well. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to copy this. Let's go ahead and paste it. We'll change our variable name to be title container. And then what we'll do is for our size, we're going to go ahead and do 240, and we'll do 64. And then for our positioning, we'll go ahead and do 64 for our X, and we'll stay at 20 for our Y, so it's aligned. And now we have our other container. So now what we need to do is we need to add in that container background, and so we'll make a new variable. So we'll do const, we'll go ahead and do container background, and we're going to go ahead and do our rectangle game objects. We're going to use this to reference our scene. We'll do add rectangle. And now we need to go ahead and provide our dimensions. So we're going to do 4 and 4 for our positioning. Then that way it's not right on the edge of our container. And now we want to go ahead and do our size. So we're going to do 692, and we'll go ahead and do 352. So basically what we're doing is we're adding some padding for 4 pixels, and so we're subtracting that from our overall width and height that we initially provided. And then that way should fill up the whole container. And now for our fill color, we're gonna go ahead and do 0xFFFF88. And let's go ahead and set our origin. And so we'll set this to 0, and then we're gonna also update our alpha. And so we'll do 0.6, that way it's a little bit transparent. Then we need to go ahead and add this into our container. So we'll do container.add, and we'll do our container background. So now our yellow rectangle is placed inside our container, and we just need to do a similar thing over here for our title. So let's copy this. We'll go ahead and paste that. And we're just going to change this to title container background. Go ahead and do that. And we just need to update our sizes. And so we'll have 232, and we'll have 56. And then we just need to go ahead and add that to the appropriate container. So we're going to reference our title container, and we'll add in that rectangle. All right, so one last thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add in our text for the title of our scene here. So what we'll do is let's make a new variable, we'll do const. We're going to do text title. Let's set it equal to this .add .text. And for here, we'll do 116 for our position. We'll do 28 for our Y. And for our text, we're just going to do items. And then for our text styling, we're just going to do an empty object for the time being. And then we'll go ahead and do set origin. And let's do 0.5. And we'll go ahead and add this to our title container. So we'll do title container.add. And we will do our text title. Then so what we'll do is let's jump over to our monster party scene. And let's copy our text styling from the top of our class. We'll come back to our inventory scene. Let's go ahead and paste that. And so let's go ahead and add in our import. We'll change our variable name to be inventory text style. And then for our font color, let's do black. So we'll do 000000. And let's bump this up to 30 pixels so it's a little bit bigger. And let's apply that to our text game objects. If we come back down to our title text, we'll place our empty object with our styling. And now we should see our text. All right, with that, that brings this video to an end. In our next video, we'll continue working on building out our initial structure for our inventory scene. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.